Okay, so what is this Spring Tool Suite? What is it trying to help you with? So Spring Tool Suite is just a bundled, rich Eclipse experience. So it also has the basic tools that you have learned for the first 6 days, and additionally it gives you some Spring specific tools. Okay? So that's the nice thing about the Spring Tool Suite. It comes in as a self-extracting exe, very much like your Eclipse, and you can run it on Mac, you can run it on Windows. If you are using Ubuntu, you can also run it on Linux. My machine is basically a Spring machine, so I'm going to pick Windows platform. So I'm going to pick a Windows 10 version, and you can see that you can save it anywhere. So I'll just leave it as a desktop copy for now, so that I can show you how it extracts itself and all that. So it's a self-extracting jar file. It's a high-speed download. You shouldn't take more than half a minute to download this particular piece of software. So once you download this, you can extract it. It creates a folder called STS. I'll show you how it creates a folder and what you can use for it. So one thing that is beautiful about Spring is you can connect it to Eclipse and use. And if you remember, I said it also works with .NET and other projects, right? So you can also actually add in as a plugin into Visual Studio when you want to integrate it with .NET projects. At the moment, we are not doing such things. We'll only stick to Java. So only the Java version is good enough for you. So just take Spring Tools 4 for Eclipse. It comes in as a zip file, and you unzip this. You have all the tools that is necessary for this course. Of course, if you need MySQL, we need MySQL Server. And of course, if you need to use the Windows Explorer version, which is the query editor version, we call it as Workbench. I use Workbench. You can either use Workbench or you can use the mini controller. I think Tin has taught you some very simple query editor, H2 console query editor. You can use that as well. Okay? So whichever is comfortable for dealing with your database, you can use that. There is no need for you to additionally install anything. And there's also new projects coming up. There is the Spring version on the cloud and all that. So there's always something interesting about Spring Framework, guys. So for now, I've just taken the default tool that is coming as the Eclipse zip file. Let me show you how this gets extracted. So to save time, what I did is I've already extracted this file. And you can see that the last 3 runs I've been using this machine. So you have 3 or 4 releases of this Spring version. So the moment you extract the jar file, you will have a folder called STS 4.10.0 release created in your folder. Actually, you can unzip this file anywhere you want. But my personal best practice is to do it either directly on your C drive or your D drive or E drive. Why I say this is, make sure that your file name doesn't have too many blank spaces. I've seen that when you go and install it in your program files or documents and settings, the file name, folder names have got blank spaces, and for some open sources tools, that's an issue. So the only thing that you have to notice is, please make sure you unzip this either directly on your C or on your D. The habit that I do is I always do it on the E drive, because my C is almost for all the software, and you can see it is nearly filling always. Okay? So that's the reason I prefer to use my F drive, and you can see that roughly has got a lot of free space. That's one of the reasons. And since I teach too many classes, I want to very clearly have versions. Okay? So that's why I have a subfolder called Eclipse, and then inside the subfolder I keep them. So inside the subfolder I keep the multiple releases. In your case, you're going to just use only one version of STS, so you can directly do it on your D drive or E drive, whichever is your preference. So once you unzip this, a folder like this is created. You open this up, you will see that this installation folder is exactly like your Eclipse. So let us understand some things about it. So suppose you want to understand what kind of tool it is and how the configuration is done and all that. The configuration folder tries to tell you all the settings and details. Okay? There is even a configuration file. You can select that, then edit it. You can see that it gives you all the configuration setup that you need to run this application. Sometimes you will find that the configuration or the starter is giving you difficulty. In such a case, you come and tweak here. Otherwise, you never have to come into all these folders. Your starting of your application is the Spring Tool Suite green leaf button. So this is equivalent to your Eclipse. So you select that, you will be able to start this application. One file, of course, is quite important, and that's basically the Spring Tool Suite configuration file. So if you select that and you say edit, this is how your startup for your Spring Tools work. So if you look at it, I have allocated 256 memory as the minimum memory, 256 MB as the minimum memory, maximum as 2048. Okay, so what I can do is I have a lot of main memory to spare, because this is the usual GPU cluster where I run my big data projects. So I have enough memory. What I can do is I can make this as 1024 MB for starters. Okay, so that way my Eclipse is faster. It's not necessary that you should all do. The minimum is 256 and it's more than enough for your projects. But in case you find that the Spring is slow, you have a very good processor, you got a TensorBook, or you got a latest laptop which has got very good configuration and at least 32 GB RAM, then you can play around with this. Okay? So this is the memory that you are allocating for your toolsuite tool to work on. So you can actually change that. This is all for your understanding. You don't have to go and tweak all these things. So your configuration file is the Spring toolsuite. This is the file that you use to start. So when I double click, this is usually starting, but I have a habit. What I do is I create a shortcut. So I'll say create a shortcut, and then I'll give a name to this. Okay? And then once I've given a name to this, I'll move this shortcut into the desktop. So every time when I have to start my application, I know how to start this. Okay? So I think these are all old administrative records. Let me delete them. Okay, so these are some of my trials that I had. So let me delete them as well. Okay. So the moment I click that, you can see that it extracts into, if I double click the zip file that comes in, it usually extracts into the current location as a folder. And what you can do is once the extraction is over, you can move this to any particular location that you want. Okay. So the self-extraction usually takes 60 seconds to 90 seconds. Then your environment is set up. Okay. So when you create a shortcut, you can see that it looks like this. If you select the shortcut, you right click and look at the properties of this shortcut. You can see it points to wherever your tool was originally installed. So in this case, you can see my version of STS is installed in E. Eclipse STS 4.10.0 is my release that I'm using. Okay. So that's all you need to understand regarding setup of the additional tools. It's not very sophisticated. Yet I have put in some instructions that will very clearly teach you how to do that, and it is inside the workshop folder. So let me just show you how it works, just in case. So you see there is this workshop instruction called the 00 workbook installing STS, right? So this is going to teach you how to do exactly all that I've done in my video so far. So it goes to the website, it downloads the zip file. When you unzip it, you can keep it anywhere on the D drive or C drive. Then this is how you start the STS, and this is how it looks like when you have started this. Okay? So this documentation is for you to go back and try. Once we have the class over for today, if you want to go back and install on your machine, you can try that. I don't see any hiccups on this, but if you still have any hiccups, we'll definitely take it and sort it out before the next session. So we'll allocate some time for environmental problems. So if you have any problem replicating what I've just shown you here, I'm glad to troubleshoot and help you with that. Okay? So this is for the installation part. So let me see if the self-extraction is over. Yeah, the self-extraction is over. The moment the self-extraction is over, you can see that it creates a folder called STS 4.10.0. This you can move it to anywhere you want. I have moved it to E drive. You can move it anywhere you want. Okay, so I've already done that, so I'm going to delete this file. So how do I start my application? Just double click on the icon. It starts. Okay. So I was basically testing all the workshops before pushing them into the cloud yesterday. So you can see that this is my default folder. I'll change this. I'll create a folder for you folks. I call this as SA52 codes. So this is going to be my default workshop folder for this run. Whatever code I do will go and sit here. Okay. So I'm going to point this workspace to E52 code. This is very similar to Eclipse. You do the same in Eclipse, so it's not going to be different. In fact, STS is on top of Eclipse. Okay. So I just point it to SA52 codes and I launch the workspace. So it takes a bit of minute or two. Okay, so once it is done, I'll also delete this. I don't need it because I have a copy. So once the workspace is pointed, you can see it starts. It's very much like Eclipse. So if you open up, you can see that the workspace is so much like Eclipse. So except that, it has got a few additional things. So I'm sure Tin taught you about Eclipse and the perspective and the tools and all that. So when Tin taught you, you can see that these are the default views that he taught you, right? How to use Java, how to use GitHub and all that. So these are the different views that you have here. So when you click on the plus button on the right hand corner of the screen, you'll be able to see that. So you can adjust your views based on that. But the default view is Java, and that is good enough for a whole project. Okay. So I'm going to just live with that, and probably I'm thinking I'll just use this as the default settings. You don't have to change perspective at all. Throughout this course, you can always leave it at Java perspective, and that's good enough for you to work with the codes and all that. That's usually the first part of the video. So how you get the tool installed and how you get it running. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video and push it to the cloud. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, you post it. I will answer your question before I go ahead and teach you how to create a project and start coding the project.